Welcome to another episode of Policy in Wonderland. I'm your host, Avi. In Policy in Wonderland, just like Alice, we are going to explore and see the wonderful world of insurance, InsurTech, and everything that's connected to this amazing ecosystem. In Policy in Wonderland, you will meet startups from all over the world, key figures, brokers, and more. So without further ado, travel today to the East Coast, right? To the East Coast,
East
Audrey.
Coast of Florida.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ah, awesome. And I want you to invite my guest and to join me as we go down the rabbit hole. So please welcome, as you already didn't know, Audry Torrence from Best Trust Inc. Hi, Audrey. Great to see you again. Three times this week, I think. Yeah,
I
three
know.
times.
Hi, Evie. Right. It's becoming a daily habit of ours, almost, almost. It's really nice to be able to talk with you on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us a bit about your background and what you initially drove you to the insurance industry?
Okay. And we have 30 minutes, right?
Um,
Because I could take 29 of those on this one question. My name is Audry Torrence. And for the past 29 years, I have lived and breathed and supported, contributed to the property casualty insurance industry by hiring within the industry. And what brought me to this point is a misadventure in my early career in hospitality management. Did that. That was what my degree was in. Didn't love it. The only thing I wanted to do after that was be a singer and piano player professionally. I did that for a little while and it worked, but not enough. So I answered an ad that asked, "Are you starving in show business?" And because I was, I applied for that job, and it was a job at a search firm in Chicago in 1995. So that's how I started, out of dire, desperate need to have a daytime income. And I learned both insurance and recruiting uh, in that role, and I haven't looked back since.
Um, what are the main challenges you encounter when recruiting for the insurance industry? So, especially from 1995 to nowadays,
As I look back over, almost 25, almost 30 years. Wow.
30 years.
Let's focus on the most recent because that's the most relevant, but there's a huge history behind what I'm about to say. What's most recent, and let's go 2020, the pandemic times and forward,
Mhm.
challenges in the United States are around attraction into the industry, in general, and those would be for entry level roles. But my niche would be experienced and above, right through executive leadership. So I'm going to talk about the challenges in experienced and above. And boy, so many. Um, the biggest challenges are in finding people that have both the right experience and the potential to adapt and learn to do things in new ways while in a new environment. And what I mean by that is if you're the hiring company, obviously your environment, your organization is going to be new to the person you're bringing on. But P.S., in insurance, pretty much everything is new right now from a process, workflow, product, even regulatory. It's revolutionary times right now. So the biggest challenge would be getting people aboard with the appropriate skill sets and the potential to take what they know and translate it into new ways of doing what they know how to do.
You're not talking only about InsurTech or MGAs or like the new kind of generation.
No, this is
Also
pervasive.
carriers or
Yeah.
yeah, also traditional insurance agencies like insurance carrier, right? It's like the
Yeah, I
same.
would say, um, if you look at the bucket of insurance carriers, you've got everything from one or two state mutuals
Mhm.
to large global enterprises. And and so the answer, of course, has to acclimate itself, to accommodate that whole spectrum. But if I'm thinking of at least a national US carrier, so I'm leaving off the smallest of the smalls and the huge global entities, but a national US carrier with some global reach, yes, of course they're doing things the same, meaning they're underwriting risk, they're handling claims, they're following regulatory structures. They're managing both the investment side of the balance sheet and the operations side of the balance sheet. So yes, of course, those things are staying the same. But you drill down from Roman numeral 1 into subtopic A and B and C and D, and workflow has changed. Demographics, who's doing this work, that has changed greatly. Where is the funding coming from? How many players are there? The environment has changed. So we're still doing what we do as an industry. Our core mission is the same, but most everything about it is changing.
I didn't realize it yet. So I obviously realized it that that we have a lot of insurtechs, that we have a lot of tech companies that involve in the insurance chain process, but it's interesting to know it from the recruiting side. And it's like, okay, I have another question. Maybe
Okay.
I will tackle it from another point of view. How does recruiting for insurtech companies, okay, is differ from traditional insurance organizations?
Okay. Recruiting for InsurTechs requires that the potential employees both know the insurance industry and also have the ability to take some risk, unless you're talking about a very mature InsurTech that has exited and is, in maintenance phase. But, talking about earlier stage
Early,
InsurTechs.
yeah.
So the person has to be willing to take some risk. That's a blunt statement of fact. But they also have to have this innate sense of adventure and curiosity. I am going to aim these comments like at the middle of the bell curve. So I'm trying not to stereotype, but the middle of the bell curve is where my comments are aimed. In the insurance industry at this moment in the US, the demographics are such that most people are over age 45. Statement of fact. Okay, so what I'm going to say is that most people over the age of 45 are perhaps not in a financial position, a familial position, an investment position where they can take that risk and join an insurtech and walk away from compensation that is certainly in the low to mid six figures. And so it's tricky for an insurtech to attract the insurance wisdom it needs with the dollars it has available to spend. So what do you do for that? How do you solve for that? And that's my job.
So how you
It
do that?
comes down to potential. Who out there in the landscape of insurance knows innately how a part of the insurance industry works, the part that's relevant to the insurtech in question. If you're a payment insurtech, it doesn't matter if someone knows how workers' compensation products get rated. There's knowledge that's irrelevant. So what I have to do is focus on the need at hand from the insurtech providing either the spot solution or the product or the platform solution, identify their need, hone in on areas of expertise in the insurance employment workforce at large, and then find that magical combination of experience, potential, affordability, and sense of adventure. Easy, right?
Yeah. It's very easy, yeah. We didn't mention in the beginning, but we are focusing only on the US market. So this episode for me is very important because as I'm coming from Israel and there is a lot of founders that listening it from across world and from India and even England and Europe.
Mhm.
And we must understand the US is very different. We talk about it pretty a lot of times before this episode, but it's very, very different from the rest of the world. It's not only one country, it's a very big country. We
Right.
have
It's
50
an
states.
amalgamation of regional cultures,
Oh,
of geography. It's yes, of course we are one country. We are the United States of America.
United, of
But
course.
yeah, but you look at regions, like the New England Northeast, and just culturally and economically, it's a different region than Southern California. There are just huge disparities. There's no single entity outside of federal regulations where you can say, oh, that's United States culture, because
No.
there's so many subcultures here.
Do you have a couple of use cases or that we can understand much better the difference between the states?
Okay. Yeah, sure. For example, remote work. I'm going to tie this into remote work because I think that's how I can make this point. Many of my clients are fully remote. And if they're hiring for a client success manager and we have a salary of X, um, a client success manager who lives in Idaho, rural Idaho, okay? Um, Perhaps they have great skills, relevant experience, wonderful, but they've been working on site at agencies or branches in Idaho. And so their compensation package is tied to that economic area, which is not very metropolitan. And then you have perhaps a candidate for this CSM role who lives in Boston on the East Coast in the Northeast of the United States. And if you live in any urban area, frankly, your pay scale is going to be such that although it's the same job, the CSM in a Northeast metro area compared to the CSM in Idaho or Montana or Wyoming, the compensation required is going to be very different. And the cultures around work are also different. But just sticking to compensation because that's measurable. And you have to know that where your people live is going to influence their expectations around compensation.
But it's not like an obvious kind of fact that, okay, if you live in New York, maybe you will have another compensation if you will live in North Carolina or Wyoming or anywhere else. But we have here a situation that we are not realize it or not thinking about it once we come from abroad.
Yeah, cause and I've experienced that because I worked for 9 years with two London-based search firms.
Okay.
And although I was in the US working on US roles, it gave me a lot of network and communication with people in Europe. And I've always worked in Bermuda, so I'm familiar with Bermudian expectations. Um, and yes, I learned that I had a lot to learn about Europe and London. So I learned some of that in 9 years. But even the most sophisticated, educated, global insurance professionals always discover something surprising about launching or hiring in the US. And so for an entrepreneur or a smaller scale company, there is so much to learn. Uh, and perhaps that's part of your goal with bringing me on.
Yeah, exactly. And because, you know, when the founders are realizing, okay, now I need to recruit workers. Okay, we are three founders, for example, and now we need to recruit our first employee.
Yeah.
When they realize they need like a professional help, because especially in insurance, you can't like present or do a PR on LinkedIn and okay, the rest will follow. And it's a kind of a different opera for insurance, especially if you're InsurTech, especially if you are young startup that want to develop in insurance.
Yeah, because and now I think you just landed on a bunch of issues. I used to joke that, and it's a bad joke, but I'll make it again. That I speak two languages. One is American English, and then my
Mm.
second language is British English, right? Because there are just subtle distinctions in humor, in language utilization, and so forth. And then for a founder who's coming from Israel or India or the emerging, African InsurTech incubator markets. Not only is English, American English, their second language, at best, it might be their third language, who knows, right? But if in a good situation, American English would be their second language. But then, oh my gosh, on top of that, the technology centric InsurTech founder has to learn the insurance language, which is absolutely filled with arcane specifics that make no sense out of context of insurance. And
And let me add on top of that, and the American insurance language, because it's different.
yeah, yeah.
Different is
So
not.
I hope we're not scaring people, but it's we're trying to shine a light on it, not deter people from coming. Because I've helped UK MGAs explore coming to the US, um, and I've talked to Israeli founders, worked with them about coming to the US, and the insurance community in the United States is eager to help, to educate, to embrace, and to bridge, because the insurance community, the folks on the progressive edges of the insurance community realize that we're starving for talent, we're eager to embrace ideas, and like the fourth industrial revolution is happening here in insurance now. We need you. We need you.
Mm. In related to this topic, you mentioned, I think it was on LinkedIn, on your LinkedIn, that most hiring managers weren't taught how to hire. What are some of key skills or knowledge they should develop, especially when you're a younger manager?
Ooh. All right. I want to make
Because
sure I can break that question
because
down into a bite-sized piece. So
yeah,
give me a little more.
so firstly, it's really when you are realize that you need someone professional to help you with the recruiting side, it's not for your first employee. Maybe after you have a couple of mistakes, and then you realize, okay, I need to call a professional help here. I hear one of the founder of Next Insurance, for example, a couple of years ago, he interviewed one of the Hebrew podcast, and he mentioned that one of their big mistake in their first in their first startup before Next Insurance was not to go to professional help with recruiting. And it was like a, I don't want to say like a mind blowing, but because as a startup you will say, I don't have money right now to get a professional app, especially in recruiting. I will get someone on LinkedIn or maybe with friends or something like that. And to realize that you are doing a big mistake, because right now after that you are going to VCs, you need to raise money and you don't know for
Yeah.
whom you are going to raise, because if it's the developer, you know the raise like the salary for developer, but what about underwriting? What about if it's chief underwriter, claims, etc., etc.? I think I
Okay.
asked a couple of questions here, but deal with it. So yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna grab onto the big meaty part of what you said, and that is that not hiring the right people when your team is small. Let me frame that in the positive. When your team is small, it's imperative that you hire the right people. Because let's say you have a team of 8 people. All right. Each person, oh God, I'm awful at math. Each person is 12.5% of your staff. If you have a team of 5 people, each person is 20% of your staff, driving your culture, contributing their ideas, making things work. And just as you wouldn't leave your money, to some untrained financial person, you should not leave your people to luck or happenstance, because your people are your asset, not only for the organic success of your company, the launch of a product, the marketing, the messaging, the managing, but also for the investment world. The VCs and private equity, those investors are going to, of course, look at what your business idea is, what you provide, what you make, but they're also going to look at who is on your team, and do they have, picture air all they have it? All right, I'm going to make them. Do they have it? And when you are building your organization as an InsurTech, or as any small business, frankly, but let's keep it limited. The people matter. And so why you should go beyond what you yourself know, in this case of organizations from outside the US trying to set up US operations, if you, as that founder of an international op coming to the US, if you have a broad US network, if you know your way around the US insurance landscape, that could be the best way. Honestly, it could be the best way to find someone. But at what cost? Do you want to spend your time doing that? Are you able to convince yourself that you have the reach in your own network to really look everywhere at everyone and to understand how to narrow that funnel? And if you don't have a broad, deep, relevant US network, well, then of course, search firm is your logical choice.
Most of the youngest, like the junior founders, if they, especially if there is their first startup, and they don't even understand sometimes the US culture. Okay, and maybe and especially the state culture, the subtext, as you mentioned before that. And related to that, maybe, and first of all, I would like you to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your new venture, new initiative, FTF, and for the founders. And so, can you tell us a bit about the FTF for the
Oh,
founders,
sure.
and why you created it? Because I think it's very related to the last question, the last answer, because the founder need to have like a community. It's not like the new buzzword, like the AI, that right now everyone have a community. No, as from my perspective, is like, especially in insurance, this is not a solo. It's not a solo venture. You need to have like a friends. You need to have your professionals near you to understand what is insurance. Because as a matter of fact, is pretty complicated, but yet pretty easy, but you need to understand it why it's easy. And before that, it is very complicated, if you get me, I think.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. Conceptually, insurance is a straightforward thing, but the issues and the joys and the problems and the celebrations that are faced by founders in the insurance industry are distinct. They are. And so for the founders, and I cannot take full credit. The inception of For the Founders was Patrick Callahan. And Pat Callahan and I have known each other for a few years. And he reached out to me with this idea about supporting the startup InsurTech, MGA, startup anything in the insurance realm, right? And so Pat and I, our brains linked up and we were off and running. And then we brought in a third person, Jess, whom you've met, Jess Beach. And Jess has experience on the VC and PE side relative to startups. And so the three of us
What is the
have
PE? What is the PE is
private
for?
equity. So venture capital and private equity, and her experience also includes family office. So we can VC, PE, FO, InsurTech. There we go. I did the acronym sweep. What For the Founders is, and we also had some support from Peter Van Artreich of Artreich Communications. What For the Founders is now a community, and shout out to Valkyrie Holmes, who pushed us into action as well. It's a community where you just show up on a Zoom meeting and hang out with a reasonable number of insurance founders, very private, very confidential. Like, you haven't seen anything on LinkedIn about this because it's not an exploitive move. It's a community caring move. Just show up and in your pajamas, or show up off screen, or show up after a workout and talk about the nonsense that you are having to endure, or the joys or the wins, and get ideas from other founders. Because I personally have worked from my home since March of 2000. So I have been around what remote work does for
Mhm.
your sense of isolation, for a lack of community. And I know when you're working hard on your own to build something, it's one of the most exciting times. But damn, is it lonely, right? Like, who do you celebrate with? Who do you commiserate with? So For the Founders, that's the one aspect. And eventually there's going to be more formalized channels to support financial health, physical health, emotional health, and then the back office end, which is really a whole other podcast. And I don't even want to start there because we'll go on and on. But there's business support as well. But that's For the Founders in a very large nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very helpful to talk about it, to talk about insurance, like in the on the subtext of insurance of the from the founder perspective, because um, I think it was with Ian this week. Yeah, it was very relaxing to talk with someone. It's like
Yes.
it's maybe sound like you're talking to the shrink, but no, you're talking with friends, with new friends, and you all have the same ideas and on the same topics, and you're sharing it from all over the world. As a matter of fact.
You find your people,
Hmm.
and something I love to do is put my favorite people together in the same space, um, and just see what happens when you all get the chance to talk together. It's a very small group, and as you know, this group is meeting once a week. And thank goodness there's 5 days in a week, because I'm going to launch other small groups. But yeah, this is
Oh, nice.
definitely a necessary outlet. It's just a
Agree,
pressure vent.
agree, agree. So as we close to the end, so let's two questions
Okay.
to wrap up all the episode, and and at the end, we will say a bit about our surprise or about what we are going to do next month. Yeah? Okay,
Yep.
awesome. First question is what has been the most rewarding experience in your career as a recruiter in the insurance sector?
Wow. All right, Wade Roble, I'm going to drop your name. Here it comes right out of my mouth. Um, the most rewarding experience I have ever had is when I got this random cold call from some guy looking for a job. And for all the search professionals out there listening, I know you're cringing because we all get random outreach as recruiters from people looking for jobs. And here's another podcast. That's not how it works. Okay. Like it's just not how it works. But something about his approach, it was actually an email, excuse me, it was an email which led quickly to a phone call. Something about his email struck me. And and I became a fan, a proponent of Wade. Now, this has only happened once in 29 years, okay? So I'm not encouraging our listeners to suddenly reach out to search professionals and say, find me a job. I know you can. Like, I'm not encouraging that because it's once in 29 years, okay? So that's the hit ratio. But I was able to find Wade a job, which facilitated his move from the state of Texas to the state of Illinois. And we've stayed in touch over the years because, like in your career, Evie, surely you have people who, they jump over from the professional into the personal and you hang out and you stay in touch. And Wade and I stayed in touch. And then when he got married and I had a baby. The baby had some health problems, which are now resolved. But because of that, Wade created a charitable foundation to assist. I know. Like, and now you understand why he's the one person I followed up with because he's got that kind of energy, right? So after his baby girl, who's now 3.5 years old and in fine health, endured this medical journey, Wade created a foundation. It's a legit, 501c3. That's the statute around nonprofit organizations. It's a legit foundation. I'm on the board of directors. This group is a year old, and that is my most rewarding experience to arise out of recruitment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't expect that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, good recruiting changes lives. I will die on that hill. That's how much recruiting matters.
Okay. So I think it's maybe I can ignore the second question, but outside of your professional life, what are some of your hobbies or interests that help you to recharge?
Oh, thank you.
And especially when you are working from home, like 4 years right now.
Yes. So I have hobbies that I do for enjoyment, and I have hobbies that I do to maintain my sanity. And on the sanity front, I must get myself to a gym and do a hard workout, 60 to 90 minutes, 3 to 4 times
Just,
a week.
just a sec,
Must.
Audrey. No,
Yes.
just a sec. I had
Okay.
a communication problem. Repeat from the sanity charge,
Okay.
etc. And I will edit, of course, after
Okay,
that.
sure. Something I must do to preserve my sanity is get to a gym 3 or 4 times a week for a hard workout, 60 to 90 minutes at a time. It's necessary. Like it's as necessary as brushing my teeth. It's just what I need.
Is it
Um,
regular gym or something special like I don't know,
Oh,
CrossFit
no,
or
just a
something?
regular
No.
gym. I moved to a condominium, which sadly does not have its own internal gym. I learned a lot of
Mm.
condominiums have a gym, but mine doesn't. So, I hop over to LA Fitness, shameless plug for LA Fitness. And my husband and I, we work out 3, 4 mornings a week, early in the morning. And then what I do for enjoyment, although working out is enjoyment, but real pure creative enjoyment. So I'm a musician, and when I mentioned earlier on, way
The
back when
piano.
in this broadcast, so I have kept that with me, and I am a singer and a keyboard player in a cover band, and we work, we gig. Before I moved to Florida, we gigged 80, 90 shows a year. And that's a ton of fun. I love 70s rock, 80s rock, and I sing and
Love
I
it.
play keyboards, and that's what I do as my two main hobbies. I also like to write, and I do a lot of arts and crafts type projects.
I love the closure of the piano from the beginning to the end right now.
Oh, that's bookends. Yeah, thank you. That was a good
Um,
observation. Oh, and I love to read, speaking of bookends. So, yeah, that keeps me busy.
do you want to talk about the surprise that we are planning to do down the
Oh,
next month?
yes. This is exciting. Just like I said a few times, and I know I went on and on in some of my answers because there's so much territory to cover and so much explaining to do for the audience of founders and investors, right? But what we're going to do, and Evie, this was such a good idea, is do a webinar that dives more deeply into the importance of team building for a startup organization, the importance of understanding what it is that outside investors are likely going to examine. Oh, and I have to drop a shout out to InsurTech Wrap.
Awesome.
Have to mention Dave Wexler from Omer's Ventures and the host of InsurTech Wrap. And if anybody listening is curious to learn more about the investment ecosphere and how it intersects with the insurance ecosphere, uh, do yourself a favor and listen to the library of resources at insurtechwrap.com.
It's a
Mind
great
changing,
podcast.
world
Yeah.
changing. So, what we're going to do, you and I, is provide a webinar that dives more deeply into just about everything we brought up. And then you had even more topics to cover, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we didn't have much enough time, but yeah. So this is the reason why we're planning the webinar. But
Right.
in because it's very important, again, the understanding that you need. It's not to understand only insurance or what is a loss ratio or what is a CLR and etc. It's also
Mhm.
how to recruit. And this is
Right.
like an art.
And
And
you
you much,
yourself as a chief underwriting officer, you bring so much credibility. I mean, the largest Israeli underwriting company, and you were the CEO. Um, we're going to have a fun time with this
yeah,
webinar. And,
yeah,
and
it's
more
gonna
than
be
fun,
cool.
of course, it's going to be informative. Yes.
Awesome. Audrey, thank you very much. As always, I really enjoy it. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Evie. Thank you.
Thank you.